We're returning to a maker culture.
Humans have a desire to make things.
You've got virtual things becoming physical and physical things becoming virtual.
There's a growing maker community.
A maker movement.
Maker movement.
Maker movement.
This rising tide of expertise.
All of these tools are available.
Democratization of design.
Who is a maker?
Moving into this convergence of physical and digital.
It's making everybody a maker. It's making everybody a technologist.
It's really up to professionals and schools to up the game. You know, what do you have to contribute? We're actually moving into the second generation of maker culture. So now they're going into, more sophisticated, what are you making, what and why, and what's meaningful in a culture.
I think the future of the world are thinker makers, what I call thinker makers or intellectual makers, people who inform themselves, understand the world, have empathy, and then can make solutions around that, whether it's medicine or in the home or education.
That's what we need to, I think, focus more and more on. What's meaningful to people, not the technology itself, but what is meaningful in the culture overall or in that space, and then bringing in the technology to manifest it, to make it happen. That to me is really good creativity.
At the beginning, when I was actually never thought of myself as developing technology. I was just a musician who wanted to get some music out, and I needed an instrument, and I couldn't buy it, so I had to build it. But I understood music. I was deeply submerged in the cultures and the communities, and so I understood what were appropriate compromises. And had I not known about it deeply, I would never have done it the same way.
The RoboHand story is two guys wanting to make replacement fingers for one of them. One of them lost his fingers in an accident. Once they'd done that, a father came to them and said, "Can you make a prosthetic hand for my son?" There's a whole group of kids that are born with amniotic band syndrome, that are born without fingers or thumbs. You don't really buy prosthetics for kids because they cost like $10,000 and they grow out of them like sneakers. But when you download the file, it's like $5 of material. Kids are wearing these things to school. They're using them to draw or do their homework. These kind of stories really motivate us and make us proud to do our work. We want to see people have an impact on the world.
If we're living in a future where you can download a 3D version or making tiny tweaks and adjustments, there's just going to be a deeper appreciation for things that are handmade and are given to you by someone you know. It's going to be a big topic of conversation, how we differentiate among what's free and shared and how we differentiate among what is purchasable. When there are so many more goods being produced by so many more makers and producers, design is going to be what really makes a product stand out.
It has to reflect that human value rather than simply be an end product, an end design that looks good but doesn't really relate to the human person.
I think at the moment we're in the midst of this love affair with the screen, where everything we have is very, very verbal. I see a future where we as designers move products to a place where not everything is explicit and verbal, to pull us out of the screen and bring us back into the world.
What I hope is that things will actually just be smarter about interpreting signals from what we already do, because I think there's plenty of information to be already learned from gestural things, from body language, from emotional states. I think there's a whole other language that we haven't explored.
I do think that as designers now, this physical language, and I break it down into sound, light, and movement, is something that now is part of our palette. And all of those things start to become a language, right? Where the object is actually communicating with you in this non-verbal, but somehow a human, understandable way. With what is the language of ambient light, and what is the language of vibrating surfaces, and what's the language of things moving in three-dimensional space.
The way that we as people are going to experience it, it's going to be in these smaller moments. I think it's a sum of a lot of smaller experiences that start to create a sense of connective tissue. These very, hopefully human moments that kind of get interwoven into our everyday lives.
If you put anything out there in the world in terms of a product, a service, a gadget, an application, it has to work. It has to bring value. It has to flow. And if it does all those things, you still shouldn't make it. Unless it also works with everything else in the environment that you already have, reduces the complexity of all of those other things, and increases the value. And that's the bar. Stuff has to work together.
I think the word and the phrase Internet of Things is just a very technical term that I think doesn't really mean anything to people. The things don't matter, they're just the enablers of the experience, and I think that's what we should be talking about.
For us, the challenge with the Internet of Things is not the technology itself. It's applying that larger context to culture and people, that you're conveying an experience that's meaningful for them and it's worth them connecting to technology.
So I won't call them wearables. They're just the intimate technologies that are mine, my personal things, that are my watch, my glasses, whatever the hell it is, my belt, my shoes, but currently my mobile, that it just seamlessly integrates with the whole ecosystem of the building when I'm in the building. So technology is not the product. The experiences that it genders is.
Everybody sees the potential of 10 billion connected devices now and 20, 30 billion connected devices in 2020. You can do a lot of things, but why are you doing those things, right? Why is it important for your customer to be connected? Why is the experience going to be meaningful for them?
One of our strengths is to make very complicated things seem simple and sort of enjoyable and allow you to act on them very intuitively. The health sector is one of the biggest untapped areas. What the Internet of Things can enable in that space, and behavior change to pushing health and wellness experiences out of the hospital and out of the professional world and into the home.
The ability for a device to be connected and be more predictive, it's something that people alone with a physical product can't do, and it's what the potential of this space really is.
Let's say I have a WeThings scale that sends my weight to the cloud, and I could also have something that's tracking all of my fitness and activity, and if those things start talking to one another, then I start having knowledge beyond information. The top of this would be wisdom. Wisdom is something that's going to actually start to suggest what you can do to be proactive. I think that wisdom might actually be beyond our devices, that wisdom is actually something very human and inside of ourselves. But I see the devices as being able to enable those.
The Internet of Things is coming into play as a tool to bring transparency to processes. Now you can donate water directly rather than donating, a pump and then not knowing what happens to the pump and basically not knowing what happened to your donation. Now you can build more direct links with the communities directly and know what impact you can really have. And I think that's providing accountability for those organizations and transparency in their process.
The double-edged sword of transparency is usually it means a lot. So, there's a lot of information. One of the things that we can do as designers is really design that transparency in some way, and that doesn't mean to hide it, it means to really make it digestible. In some ways, it's not at all about convenience, it's really about helping people to unlock the potential that we all have, to live a meaningful life.
The bias of the path of least resistance, the things that are easiest to do, are the things we're most likely to do. That's how we channel behavior. And if we want to change society, change the biases, change the bias of the path of least resistance, so it's easier to do it the preferred way rather than the unpreferred way. And the technologies that we build can bring that about, no problem. But you got to understand behavior. The most important technology for a technologist to understand is the technology of the human being.
I think the practice of design for development should focus strictly around user-centered design and actually having every product, every system, every solution come directly from the user's experience.
You really have to be very careful about who is deciding what needs to be done. Find a way of understanding what is meaningful to them.
You can't do technology for technology's sake. A lot of organizations that are anchored here will already start thinking, an iPad could solve this. It's throwing a specific technology at a problem rather than really understanding what the problem entails. I've seen, computers even sitting in remote health clinics that are brand new, that have been donated 10 years ago, but nobody whether had the infrastructure to set them up or actually needed computers.
Instead of just assuming that we're going to put these things out and give those going to change the world and things hunky-dory, which has clearly turned out not to be the case and was predictably so. And pretend a $2,000 computer costs $100 and where's a community close by where I can actually afford to do the observation testing and then test the software. And if you can't do it at home and you can't do it in that close thing, why are you going to do this global project? And by the way, I haven't said anything against computers in education, but it's a way of working.
So again, it all starts from the human connection, and then that leads to understanding truthfully what the problem is and what then the solution should be. And most times it's a connected solution.
There is just an assumed optimism that the world will be better by technology. Anyone who knows anything about the world, much less a little bit of history, it's completely untrue. Some of the greatest technology comes out of war. GPS came out of DARPA, the internet came out of DARPA. Some of the most powerful innovation in our lifetime was financial innovation that came out of Wall Street. It turned out to be crap, right? Total crap that gave us the worst recession, since the Depression.
It's Orwellian to say, I'm going to change and engineer society and culture. But the fact is, if you introduce a toothpick into a culture that doesn't have toothpicks, you are in fact explicitly or implicitly changing the culture and redesigning it. I think there's a responsibility there. And that's always been true, but it's more important now because the footprint of the things we do today is that much broader.
Everything we do has a social and cultural impact, and we have to be very aware of that. And that really requires some, understanding of history and philosophy and your own values. Frankly, very little of that is taught in most schools. Very little. We need to do a better job.
I call it the Spider-Man effect. With great power comes great responsibility. You're going to be able to collect so much data and information about people. You're going to be able to track them wherever they are. And there's an implicit value exchange and an implicit moral aspect where if you're going to do that, one, you have to be upfront about it. And equally important, you really should be trying to improve their lives in some way. And if you're not, in essence, creating that value exchange, I think you're not living up to the obligation of the Spider-Man effect.
We live in a world where people keep saying, I want everything should be free, information free, this should be free, this should be free, I shouldn't have to pay for this, the music should be free. And nearly all the stuff in our society today that we take as free, it's not free, we're just paying for it in a different currency. It might be, I get a free app, I pay in loss of privacy.
Where you have information being gathered on somebody's perhaps health and fitness, somebody's heart rate, where does this information go? What happens if some of that information is also being given to his health insurer? We're going to up his premium or perhaps not give him any health cover. So what happens to this information?
The last thing you want is for somebody's pacemaker to get hacked. We're here to do this work because we're trying to make the world a better place. We're not here to create things that fundamentally would affect people negatively.
The first designers were very empathetic. They were doing things for society or reacting to society, and somewhere around 1935, in the early 40s, designers took a shift, or at least product designers took a shift and got in bed with marketing. And then design was used to manipulate society. And I think we're at a cusp now where we can change and get that back.
I view digital as a prosthesis, as a prosthetic that should amplify my ability to be human.
We're extending what has always existed. We're pushing it out. I don't know if we're making it better, I don't know if we're making it worse, but we're enhancing it. I think what technology is doing is giving us enormous amounts of capability.
When we flip on a light switch, it gives us the illusion that we can turn night into day. And when we change the thermostat, it gives us the illusion that we can change winter into summer or whatever it is that we prefer. And I think that there's something really fascinating and really human in doing that. And being able to provide that as a designer is very exciting. We're giving people the power to be superhuman.
If I understand what it is that I care about in terms of my sense of self as a human and what I'd like to amplify and get better at, then I could approach technology from the perspective of how could it amplify that? How could that bring that out?
It used to be that creativity was a calling. You do it because it's beckoning you. You want to do something that's new and wonderful and great. It's a religious calling.
I'm hopeful that these new experiences can bring back some of that human interface element that seems like it's drifting away.
I just hope things become more human again. That we humans take back their value and that we really understand sort of how to relate to each other. I would just love 5 years out, 10 years out, that what's beautiful about humans, what's the essence of being a human is elevated.
Now, if we can do anything, what should we do?